What if I told you that hitting $50,000 in savings doesn't just change your bank account? It literally rewires how your brain makes decisions. I don't mean that as a metaphor. I mean it as a documented neurological shift that researchers can actually measure. Right now, if you are like the median American with less than $8,000 in savings, your nervous system is running a financial survival program. It's a biological stay-alive loop that quietly controls every major choice you make. But there is a specific threshold where that survival program completely shuts off. That number is $50,000. Most people treat 50,000 as just another financial milestone on the way to something bigger. They are completely wrong. It is not a finish line, it is a fault line. And what happens to your psychology, your career, and your wealth on the other side of that line will genuinely shock you. I'm Mason. On this channel, we strip away the financial BS and show you the real math and psychology behind money. Because understanding how the game actually works is the only way to escape it. Today we are breaking down the 5 invisible transformations that happen when you cross $50,000, and exactly the roadmap to get there, even if you are starting from zero today. Let's get into it. Here's what makes $50,000 different from every number that came before it. At $1,000 in savings, you can handle a flat tire. At $5,000, you can survive a bad month. At $10,000, you can cover a medical deductible without borrowing. At $25,000, you start to feel like you're getting somewhere. But at $50,000, something happens that no financial advisor will explain to you clearly, because it's not about money anymore. It's about psychology. Researchers call it the security threshold, the point where your brain stops treating money as a survival resource and starts treating it as a strategic tool. Below the threshold, every financial decision you make is driven by fear. Should I buy this? Can I afford that? What if something breaks? Above the threshold, the fear goes quiet. Not because you're rich, but because your nervous system finally registers that the next emergency won't destroy you. Studies on financial stress and cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, show that people with substantial emergency savings exhibit measurably lower baseline stress levels. Better sleep, sharper decision-making, lower anxiety. Your body has been running a low-grade financial panic for years, and you didn't even notice because it was always there. $50,000 is the number where that panic finally stops. My name is Mason, and this channel runs the real math on money. No products to sell, no courses to push, just the numbers and what they actually mean. If that's what you're looking for, subscribe, because we're about to break this apart. Let's start with the most immediate change that $50,000 creates. And it's the one nobody talks about because it sounds too simple. You stop making desperate decisions. Here's what desperate decisions look like in real life, and I guarantee you've made at least 2 of these. You stayed at a job you hated because you couldn't afford to quit. Not because it was the right job. Not because you were learning. Not because you believed in the company. Because next month's rent was coming and your savings account had $200 in it. And that number was louder than every other thought in your head. Or you took the first offer you received instead of negotiating, because having no income for even 2 weeks felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Or you put a $4,000 car repair on a credit card at 24% interest, because paying it in cash would have emptied everything you had. Every one of those decisions cost you money. The job you stayed at? It cost you years of career growth and tens of thousands in higher salaries you never negotiated for. The offer you didn't negotiate? Research from Carnegie Mellon shows that a single failed salary negotiation costs an average of $600,000 in lifetime earnings. $600,000 because you didn't have enough savings to feel safe saying, "I need a few days to think about this." The car repair on the credit card? That $4,000 at 24% APR over 18 months cost you $5,600. You didn't solve a $4,000 problem. You created a $5,600 one, and then you called it handled. This is what life below the security threshold looks like. It's not dramatic, it's not cinematic. It's just an endless series of slightly bad decisions, made slightly too fast, because you didn't have the financial cushion to wait for a better option. $50,000 ends that. Not because $50,000 is some magical number, but because for the average American household spending roughly $6,140 a month, $50,000 represents approximately 8 months of total living expenses. 8 months. That is enough time to find a new job without panicking. Enough time to negotiate properly. Enough time to pay for the emergency in cash instead of financing it at 24%. Enough time to think. And in personal finance, the ability to think clearly is worth more than almost any investment return you'll ever find. So here's the practical question. How do you actually get to $50,000 if you're not there yet? Let's run the real math, because this is where most financial content fails you. They tell you to save, but they never show you the actual timeline. The average American household has a median income of $83,700 and spends about 93% of after-tax income. That leaves roughly $340 a month in actual savings at current patterns. At $340 a month, reaching $50,000 takes 12 years and 3 months. That's the default timeline if you change nothing. Now, here's what happens when you apply the system from our first video: the automatic 50% raise capture, the subscription audit, the debt avalanche. If you increase your savings rate to $800 a month, which is realistic after cutting $150 in subscriptions and redirecting 50% of your next raise, you reach $50,000 in 5 years and 2 months. And if you're aggressive, now $1,200 a month, which means a side income or a strategic job change, you cross $50,000 in 3 years and 5 months. Those are real numbers, not fantasy, not just invest in crypto. 3.5 years of focused discipline, and your entire financial psychology changes. Here's your first action. Open a high-yield savings account today, not tomorrow, today. And set up a recurring automatic transfer from your checking account on the same day your paycheck lands. The amount doesn't matter yet. $100 is fine. $200 is better. Whatever you can do without thinking about it. Because the hardest part of saving $50,000 is not the 50th thousand. It's the first 100. Now, we need to talk about the moment that changes everything about how you think about money. And it's pure mathematics. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner for over 40 years and one of the most successful investors in American history, said something that most people hear and immediately forget. He said, the first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. And then he said something most people never quote. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit. Here's what he was actually saying, and here's why $50,000 is the halfway point where the shift begins. When you have $500 in a savings account earning 4.5% interest, you make $22.50 a year. That's not money. That's a rounding error. When you have $5,000, you earn $225 a year. You barely notice it. But when you have $50,000 and you move it into an index fund averaging the S&P 500's historical return of approximately 10% per year, your money generates $5,000 in returns in the first year alone. $5,000. That's not pocket change. That's a month's rent in most American cities. Your money just worked an entire month for you while you slept. And here is where the math gets genuinely exciting. There's a rule in investing called the Rule of 72. You divide 72 by your annual return rate, and that tells you how many years it takes for your money to double. At 10% average annual return, 72 divided by 10 equals 7.2 years. That means $50,000 becomes $100,000 in roughly 7 years without you adding a single dollar, without working overtime, without a side hustle, without doing anything except not touching it. And then that $100,000 doubles to $200,000 in the next 7 years. And $200,000 becomes $400,000 7 years after that. In 21 years, $50,000 that you never added another cent to becomes $400,000. That's not a financial fantasy. That's the documented historical performance of a boring index fund doing what it does. But here's the part that genuinely breaks people's brains when they see it for the first time. The journey from $0 to $50,000? That was almost entirely your effort, your sacrifice, your discipline. The journey from $50,000 to $400,000? That was almost entirely the math. You did the hard part. Compound interest does the rest. This is what Munger meant. The first chunk of money is brutal because you're doing all the work. But once you have enough capital for the returns to matter, the equation flips. Your money starts earning money that earns money that earns money. And at $50,000, that engine starts running loud enough for you to hear it. So where do you actually put $50,000 to make this math work? Not in a regular savings account. A standard savings account at a big bank pays 0.01% interest. That's $5 a year on $50,000. That's not saving. That's donating purchasing power to inflation. Here's the framework, and it's not complicated. First, keep 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account, earning 4 to 5% APY. Right now, that's approximately $19,000 to $38,000. That's your emergency fund. You do not invest this. You do not touch this. This is the money that lets you think clearly. Second, everything above that emergency fund goes into a low-cost total market index fund, a Vanguard VTI, a Fidelity FSCAX, or their equivalents. These funds track the entire U.S. stock market. Average annual return over the last 30 years, approximately 10%. Expense ratio, 0.03%, meaning you pay $15 per year on a $50,000 investment to have it professionally managed. Third, If your employer offers a 401k match, any match at all, max it out before doing anything else. An employer match is a 50% to 100% instant return on your contribution. There is no investment on earth that guarantees that. If you're leaving employer match on the table, you are declining part of your salary every single paycheck. 3 steps: emergency fund and a HISO, index fund for everything above it. Max the employer match. This is not sophisticated investing. It's not exciting. Nobody makes YouTube videos about it because it's boring. But boring is how 50,000 becomes 400,000. And exciting is how $50,000 becomes $12,000 in a meme stock that someone on Reddit promised would go to the moon. Now we need to talk about the change that nobody prepares you for. And it's the one that hits the hardest because it's not about money at all. It's about who you are. The person who saves $50,000 is not the same person who started at zero. And I don't mean that in a motivational poster way. I mean it neurologically. To accumulate $50,000, you had to rewire your dopamine system. You had to find satisfaction in watching a number grow rather than in buying something new. You had to say no hundreds of times when saying yes would have felt better in the moment. You had to build what psychologists call delayed gratification on a scale most people never achieve. That process changes you at a fundamental level. You start evaluating purchases differently. Not, can I afford this? But, is this worth what it costs me in future compounding? That $300 jacket isn't $300 anymore. It's $300 that would become $2,400 in 21 years. You don't stop buying things. You just start buying them with your eyes open. And that shift from unconscious spending to intentional allocation is the behavioral foundation that separates people who build wealth from people who make good incomes and wonder where it all went. But here's where it gets complicated. And this is the part nobody warns you about. Your friendships change, not because you change friends, because you change. When you're focused on building wealth, the Friday night dinner that cost $85 per person starts to feel different. Not wrong, just different. You start doing mental math you didn't used to do. You start noticing spending patterns in the people around you. You start feeling a gap between how you think about money and how the people closest to you think about it. Some friends will be genuinely happy for your progress. They'll ask how you did it. They'll want advice. They'll start their own journey. Other friends, and this is the brutal part, will start treating you differently. They'll assume you should pick up the check more often. They'll make comments about you being cheap when you suggest a less expensive option. They'll say things like, must be nice, in a tone that doesn't feel like a compliment. This is not malice, it's discomfort. Your financial progress is holding up a mirror to their financial situation, and the reflection makes them uneasy. The same thing happens in romantic relationships. Having substantial savings makes you more attractive to some people, but for reasons that should make you cautious. And it makes you more selective in ways you don't expect. You start noticing whether a potential partner has financial discipline. Not because you're materialistic, but because you now understand, viscerally from experience, that financial incompatibility is one of the leading causes of relationship failure. Money conversations go from awkward to essential because you've built something worth protecting. And here's the one nobody talks about publicly. Guilt. Genuine, unexpected guilt. When your savings account crosses $50,000 and your friend is stressed about covering rent, you feel it. When a family member asks for a loan and you have the money but know that lending it will damage both the money and the relationship, you feel it. When you realize you could help everyone around you and still can't help everyone around you, the weight of that is real. Some people sabotage their savings because of this guilt. They start spending irrationally. They lend money they know they won't get back. They downplay their financial situation to avoid the discomfort of having more than the people they love. Here's what I need you to understand about that guilt. It's natural, and it's wrong. Your financial stability doesn't take anything away from anyone else. You're not hoarding resources. You're building resilience. When you're financially stable, you're not asking friends for loans. You're not one emergency away from becoming someone else's financial burden. You are part of the solution. And the best thing you can do for the people you love is show them, by example, that building wealth on a normal income is possible. The identity fracture doesn't require therapy. It requires one decision and one sentence. The decision is this: stop apologizing for building wealth. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you save. You don't need to justify your choices. You don't need to perform poverty to make other people comfortable. The sentence is the same one from our first video, and it works every time. I'm working on something right now, so I'm keeping things lean. That sentence does 3 things. It communicates that you're intentional, not cheap. It signals that this is temporary by choice, not permanent by circumstance. And it closed the conversation without inviting debate. For the guilt specifically, here's the reframe that changed everything for me. On an airplane, the oxygen mask instruction is put yours on first, then help others. Nobody calls that selfish. They call it survival protocol. Your $50,000 is your oxygen mask. Secure it first. Then you can help from a position of strength instead of a position of shared weakness. Shared weakness doesn't save anyone. It just means two people drowning instead of one. Now I need to warn you about something, and this is genuinely important because it destroys more wealth than market crashes. The $50,000 trap. Here's how it works. You grind for years. You sacrifice. You automate. You say no to things your friends say yes to. You watch that number climb from $5,000 to $15,000 to $30,000 to $50,000. And then your brain does something incredibly predictable and incredibly dangerous. It says you've earned this. You deserve a reward. Maybe a nicer apartment. Maybe a new car. Maybe just loosening the budget for a few months because you've been so disciplined. This is hedonic adaptation, your brain's built-in mechanism for normalizing progress and resetting your satisfaction baseline to zero. The same mechanism that made your last raise disappear is now pointed directly at your savings. And the timing could not be worse. Because $50,000 is exactly the point where compound interest starts to accelerate. If you leave $50,000 invested and add nothing for 20 years, it becomes $336,000. If you pull $15,000 out for lifestyle upgrades and leave $35,000 invested for the same 20 years, it becomes $235,000. That $15,000 you spent on a reward didn't cost you $15,000. It cost you $101,000 in lost compounding. $101,000. Because you felt like you deserved a treat. This is why the $50,000 milestone is the most dangerous point in the entire wealth-building journey. You are close enough to critical mass that every dollar has exponential leverage. And your brain is telling you, with absolute conviction, that it's okay to ease off. Financial advisors see this pattern constantly. A client reaches a major milestone, relaxes their savings habits, upgrades their lifestyle, and 3 years later their net worth is back to where it was before the milestone. They didn't lose the money to a market crash. They didn't make a bad investment. They just quietly allowed their lifestyle to absorb the surplus. Here's what makes this so dangerous. The exact mechanism that drained your paycheck in the early years, the one we called the invisible raise thief, is the same mechanism now, just operating at a much higher cost. The $50,000 betrayal is that thief's older, more dangerous sibling. Because this time it's not stealing a $700 a month raise. It's stealing the compound interest on your entire life savings. The escape from the $50,000 betrayal is one rule and one automation. The rule: you did not earn the right to spend. You earned the right to compound. Write that down. Put it where you can see it. Because your brain will fight you on this. The automation. The day your savings crosses $50,000, increase your automatic monthly investment contribution by 20%. Not because you need to save more aggressively, but because that increase locks the gains in and prevents your lifestyle from expanding into the space your savings just created. If you were investing $500 a month, you now invest $600. If you were doing $800, you now do $960. The extra amount is small enough that you won't feel it in your daily life. But it's large enough to signal to your brain that the milestone means acceleration, not celebration. Celebrate by compounding harder. That's the only celebration that builds wealth. Everything else is just converting your future into your present. Here is the final transformation, and it's the one that makes all the sacrifice worth it. $50,000 gives you something that no income level alone can provide. Freedom to say no. No to the job that drains you. No to the apartment lease that locks you into a city you've outgrown. No to the relationship where financial dependency keeps you stuck. No to the boss who knows you can't afford to walk away and treats you accordingly. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it approach motivation versus avoidance motivation. Before $50,000, you are running away from broke. Every career decision, every financial decision, every life decision is filtered through one question. Will this keep me safe? That's avoidance. You're not building toward anything. You're just trying not to fall. After $50,000, the question changes. It becomes, what do I actually want? That is approach motivation, and it changes everything. You take the job that pays less but teaches you more, because you can afford the temporary pay cut. You move to the city where the opportunities are, because you have enough runway to establish yourself. You start the business you've been sketching in your notes app for 3 years, because the risk of failure is no longer the risk of homelessness. This freedom also unlocks what I call strategic patience. Before $50,000, every financial opportunity feels urgent. You need returns now. You need results now. You need proof that the sacrifice is working now. That urgency makes you take bad deals, chase trends, and sell investments at exactly the wrong time. After 50,000, you can wait. You can watch a market downturn and buy more instead of panicking. You can negotiate a job offer for 2 weeks instead of accepting in 24 hours out of fear. You can invest in a certification or a degree that takes 18 months to pay off because you're not living on the edge of next month. Warren Buffett said that the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. $50,000 is what makes patience affordable. And here is the final piece, the one that brings all of this together. 50,000 changes how you perceive time itself. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, psychologists call it present bias. You can only think about this week, this bill, this emergency. The future feels too uncertain to plan for, so you don't. But substantial savings create what researchers call temporal flexibility. You start thinking in years instead of weeks. That gym membership stops being an expense and becomes a health investment. That boring but stable job becomes a strategic platform for your next move. That $3,000 professional certification becomes a bet on your future earning power, not a cost you can't justify. The ability to think in decades instead of in paychecks is the single most valuable financial skill a person can develop. And $50,000 is the price of admission. So let's bring this all the way back. $50,000 in savings is not just a financial milestone. It's 5 transformations happening at the same time. First, the survival exit. Your brain stops running a low-grade financial panic that has been draining your decision-making for years. Second, the math tipping point. Your money starts earning money fast enough for you to feel it, and compound interest shifts from theoretical to visceral. Third, the identity fracture. Who you are changes. Your dopamine system rewires. Your relationships shift. And you discover that guilt is the price of progress that nobody warns you about. Fourth, the $50,000 betrayal. The exact moment when compounding accelerates is the exact moment your brain tells you to ease off. And the cost of listening is 6 figures of lost wealth. Fifth, the $50,000 passport. Freedom from desperation, strategic patience, the ability to think in decades instead of paychecks, and the power to say no. None of these transformations require a 6-figure income. None of them require a financial advisor. None of them require luck, connections, or a trust fund. They require a decision, a system, and enough patience to let the math run. The median American has $8,000 in savings. You already know what that buys. One emergency and then back to zero. $50,000 buys something entirely different. It buys the version of your life where you make decisions from strength instead of fear. That version exists. The math proves it. The psychology confirms it. And every single dollar you save from this point forward is a step closer to crossing that line. Before you close this video, here's your complete action stack. 1. Open a high-yield savings account today and set up an automatic transfer on payday. Start with $100. Increase it by 1% of your income every 90 days. 2. Calculate your personal security threshold. Take your real monthly expenses and multiply by 8. That exact number, not $50,000, your number, is your fault line. 3. Once your emergency fund is fully established, open an investment account and start automatic monthly contributions to a total market index fund. 4. Max your employer match. It is the only guaranteed 50 to 100% return that exists. Stop leaving it on the table. 5. When you cross $50,000, do not celebrate with spending. Increase your automatic investment by 20% instead. Let the milestone mean acceleration, not reward. 6. Remember that the $50,000 betrayal is coming. Your brain will tell you that you've earned a reward. Know that in advance. And know that the real reward is the version of your life waiting on the other side of the fault line. If this changed how you think about that number, hit the like button. It's how this channel grows and it tells me to keep running the math. If you haven't watched episode 1, where we broke down the 6 traps that keep people feeling broke on good incomes, it's linked right here. That video is the foundation this one is built on. Subscribe if you want to keep going, because we're just getting started. I'm Mason.